Welcome to Monday Moment. This is Health Awareness Month, of course, all month long. We thank you for joining us tonight. I have another special guest. Let me tell you, this month has been so powerful. I was telling my guests earlier as we were chit-chatting that each Monday, I have gotten something personal out of each talk, out of each guest. And so I look forward to doing the same thing tonight with my special guest. Let's open up in a word of prayer. Father, we love you. We give you glory and praise. We thank you for this opportunity, God. May the words of our mouths and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord. You are our strength and our Redeemer. Anoint everyone who listens to this broadcast whenever they do, and help them. Help us to help them, and help them to help themselves. We honor you, Lord, and we give you praise. In Jesus' name, amen. If you'd be so kind, please partner with our ministry. You can do so at dstokes.org. You can send a seed made payable to DSM Incorporated, D Stokes Ministries Incorporated, to 213 Moore Street, Thomasville, North Carolina, 27360. Or, of course, you could send a seed to Cash App Stokes 1908. So any way that you would like to bless us, we would receive it, and you're sowing into good soil. So let's get it going tonight. If you have any questions or comments, if we can get to your questions, we might. But if you have any comments, please put it in the chat. Please like and share this page. It's really very important that we take care of our mental and physical health. And we've been harping on that it's okay to say, I have a therapist. It's okay to go to a therapist. It's okay to have a psychiatrist, a counselor, whatever you need, it's okay. And so our guest tonight is going to emphasize that as well. So let me tell you who we've got. We've got Dr. Holly Sawyer with us tonight. She's a licensed therapist. She's from the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, and she is the CEO and lead psychotherapist at her solo practice, Life First Therapy and Therapy Loft Collective, an online group practice with her team of dynamic therapists. Dr. Holly is also an entrepreneur, mindset coach, national mental health public speaker, and college professor. She's the author of Get Your Mind Right, Get Your Money Right, the mental health guide for successful entrepreneurs. I hope she sends me one of those books. And it's time to talk about trauma. She's been featured on Philadelphia's Fox News 29, Bustle, Pop Sugar, and more. Would you welcome my guest tonight, Dr. Holly Sawyer? Hey, Dr. Holly. Let me unmute you. There we go. Hey, Dr. Holly, how are you?
Hi, I'm well, Dr. C. Thanks for having me on tonight. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, thank you. It looks like Linda Brown has tuned in tonight, and she's listening as well. Our meeting. So we thank Pastor Linda for connecting us, and we're going to jump right into it. If that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
First question I want to ask you is, tell the people, tell me, tell us all, what is the difference between a counselor and a psychiatrist?
Very great question. So a psychiatrist, a counselor, a therapist, and a psychologist, we all can practice and provide therapy. However, what makes a psychiatrist different than a licensed therapist like myself is that they actually go to medical school and they can prescribe medication, right? And so I, as a licensed therapist, I cannot prescribe medication, but I can provide you therapy. So if I have a client and we're doing, therapy for 3, 6, 9 months, and they're feeling like they may need medication for like anxiety and or depression, I will refer them out to a physician, which is a MD, a psychiatrist, where they can be evaluated and assessed for the particular type of medication that they may need.
Awesome. Next question I want to ask you is, do I have to have something mentally wrong in order to see a therapist?
No, and I'm glad you asked that question because a lot of times, especially as Black folk, we may think like only crazy people or people who have something mentally wrong see a therapist, and that's just not true. Sometimes we don't have family and friends who are supportive of us. We may have family and friends who are going through their own life issues and they cannot be there for us in the capacity that we may need. We may have family and friends that are not objective, they are very judgmental. And again, when you see a therapist, you can talk to them about anything you want to talk about. It doesn't have to be like, I only see this therapist because I'm depressed or anxious. You
Sure.
can talk to them about relationship issues, things going on at work, or you just really want to vent. And they provide you a safe space that's confidential to have those type of talks. They're non-judgmental, at least they should be. And again, they're very supportive. So you may not be able to get that type of support that you need from family and friends. So no, you don't have to be having or experiencing any type of mental anguish or disorder to see a therapist.
I have spent some time in therapy myself. The very first time I went to therapy, I went to a grief therapist. And so they were very good. I was going through grief over the loss of my mother about 12 years ago. And so they were very good. I've also gone to therapy to relieve some childhood memory trauma. And so that's been very helpful as well. And of course, I'm glad you mentioned relationships. So relationships could send you to therapy as well.
Yes, they can.
But you know, the truth about that, Dr. Holly, is everything is a relationship.
It is.
You could be having issues with your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, your friend, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your spouse, whatever. And so sometimes we need that little extra. But I want to ask you this: what are the signs of psychological trauma?
So sometimes people like to look at or think that it all boils down to, like being victimized as far as like maybe we'll just say like rape, right? Some type of like trauma around that. But think about people who survived or went through Katrina, right? That could be, a sign of a type of psychological trauma. So when we look at psychological trauma, it could be shock, denial, and/or disbelief. It could be you displaying aggression. You may have issues sleeping. So it could be insomnia or you sleeping a lot. It could be you experiencing anxiety and or depression or dissociation where you're very just like detached and not as social as you used to be, right? Or it could be some physical concerns because a lot of times our body does hold on to trauma that we've experienced, and so it can have physical manifestation. And so some of those, I'm sorry, Dr. D, some of those physical manifestations could be decreased lack of energy. It could be obesity or losing a lot of weight. I talked about insomnia. It could be elevated heart rate, some trouble around breathing, poor concentration, easily distracted, things like that.
Good, because I was going to ask you that. What are some of those signs?
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Let's talk about choosing a therapist. Um, is online therapy better than face-to-face therapy?
No, I don't think one is better than the other. I think it just depends on your preference. So when now that we have gone through this pandemic and we're kind of like on the other end of it, let me just say that a lot of us have not taken the time to pause and accept and acknowledge the good things that have come out of the pandemic, right? We've been so focused on the people that we lost, which is not bad because we do want to process grief. But at the same time, I do want us to also think about the good things that have come out of this pandemic. And one of those good things is that therapy has not stopped. It's continued to be accessible and even more now accessible because of the online or teletherapy access. And so a lot of people were not even going face to face, but now it's like I can do it from my home. Nobody knows that I'm doing it, and I can see this therapist again in my own space. And that has been a good positive because of the pandemic. Some therapists may charge less because they're doing teletherapy. But again, one is not better than the other. It's just what really works for you in your life situation. Some people have children or take care of loved ones, and they can't really travel across town. They may or may not have a car, or they may stay very far away from the actual therapist location. So again, teletherapy works excellent for those type of people. But The therapist is still a therapist, and they're going to deliver therapy, whether it's face to face or online, the same way that they would, regardless of the modality.
Awesome. So, what are some questions people who are seeking therapy can ask a therapist, say during a phone consultation?
That's a very, very good question. So, if I am calling around trying to find therapists, I have about 10 questions that you can ask. One, you can ask them if they're licensed. Now, let me just say that a licensed therapist doesn't necessarily mean that they are a better therapist. It's just that that they went through the education, they've gone through the clinical supervision, and they've become licensed with their state. There are some therapists that are still going through that transition so that they can get licensed and they're just as good. But that can be a question that you ask, especially if it does matter to you.
Mhm.
You definitely want to ask them if they specialize in your particular area of concern: anxiety, depression, workplace issues, racial trauma, sexual trauma, grief, and loss. Are they accepting new clients? Right now, we are filling up very fast, and some of us have waiting lists. So if they are accepting new clients, the next question you want to ask is, how long would I need to wait for an appointment? Because if you're looking to see somebody as soon as you call, that may not be the case, depending on the therapist that you speak to. Then you want to ask, how much are your sessions? Do you offer a sliding scale? And so a sliding scale is just to say that if you do have to pay out of pocket and you feel like that therapist rate is a little bit much for your budget, you can ask them if they have a sliding scale, which is something, a little bit of a discount, if you will, off of their self-pay price. Another question you can ask, what type of payment methods do they accept? Now, because we're again in this virtual world, a lot of therapists are opening up to Venmo and Cash App and PayPal if they haven't already before. If you are looking to use insurance and not looking to pay out of pocket, ask the therapist, do they accept your insurance? You can also ask them how long they've been in practice, if that's important to you. And to learn more about the therapist, you can ask them, why did they become a therapist?
I'm typing all of this up because I want everybody to see. I hope I spelled everything right. So I think I think I got all your questions. Are they licensed? What is their specialization? Are they accepting new clients? How long is the wait for an appointment? How much will it cost? All these are great, obviously, questions. The type of payment methods, if they have a sliding scale, can I use my insurance? And how long has the therapist been in practice? And why did they become a therapist? Those are great questions. I don't think I ask that much when I have go to therapy, but I'm having some issues here with my internet. I seem to always ask my massage therapist how long they've been doing it, or my nail tech how long they've been doing it. But it's a good practice to ask your doctors, your lawyers, your therapists how long and why they became why they became therapists.
Yeah, and you can ask and get a little nosy, because again, these are relationships that you're building with somebody, a total stranger who you are trusting with a very vulnerable part of you. So you want to kind of get in there to figure out if this is somebody that you can connect with on a deeper level. And so some of those questions will allow you to kind of dig a little deep.
Love it, love it. What are some things I can ask myself to determine if the therapist was a good fit for me after the session, the initial session?
So a lot of times people will go to a therapist once and be like, okay, I didn't like him or her. And first impressions do hold weight, but I also recommend that you see that therapist at minimum 2 times, at max 3, to see if it's a good clinical fit, because therapists are human. We are people too, and we're not always at our best, right? Some days we may have had a flat tire or just lost a loved one, but we still want to show up and be there for clients. So we also should have some empathy and some grace. However, when you go and you have those 1 or 2 sessions, you can ask yourself, did the therapist match your preferences? So your preferences could be gender, age, race, background, whatever those preferences are. Did they match? You can ask yourself, did I feel comfortable and safe while sharing with this therapist? Because you want to feel comfortable and you want to feel safe. If you're feeling uncomfortable or unsafe, it's just not going to work, right? The
Sure.
next thing you want to ask is, did I like the therapist? Now, this question is subjective because what
Right.
I mean by like is this somebody that you can see yourself forming a relationship with? Not somebody that you can see being your best friend or your girlfriend or, your male homie, because at the end of the day, therapists were professionals and we cannot ethically be your friends. But do you think that you like this therapist enough to continue this professional relationship? So that's what I mean by like. Did she or he listen authentically and thoughtfully? And you will know if somebody is really attentive to you, listening to you by the questions they may ask, or sometimes by the things that they don't say. And what I mean by is just the silence, because they are really digesting and taking in what you are saying and giving you that space to share because they're learning about you. Another question you can ask yourself is, did she or he seem to be interested, attentive, caring? Again, you will see these things verbally by what they say or what they may ask in their body language. Another question, did she or he understand and accept me? So,
Mm.
did you feel like you were being understood as you were talking and expressing yourself? Did you feel accepted? Um, Another question, did she or he seem competent and trustworthy? Because, sometimes we do look for therapists that look like us, whether they're black and female, black or male, but we don't want to be, with someone that look like us, but they're still not competent. And I mean by that is just because we're black, that doesn't necessarily mean that we grew up the same way, right? Socioeconomically. You may not understand my story per se, but are you competent enough and trustworthy enough to really help me with where I'm at right now in my life? And the last question I would suggest is, did she or he have appropriate boundaries? That
Mm.
includes no flirting, oversharing their problem,
Mm.
making your session about them. We want to look for those things.
I love that last thought because I was getting ready to go there. I, I was doing an online session during the pandemic
Okay.
and before the elections, and my therapist had a political comment, and I didn't appreciate it. It
Mm,
wasn't because it was actually opposite of what I thought, but I just thought there was no place for that in the meeting. You understand what I'm saying? Like I agreed with what she said, but I was still offended because I thought there was no place for that. This was about me and not about you and your opinion,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Even though again I agreed with what she said, but I still thought it was no place for it. So boundaries, I think, are extremely important, and therapists not putting themselves or their situations onto the client, I think, is a red flag. So I think that's a good thought as someone seeking therapy to pay attention to that. So thank you. If someone in our audience has a loved one who needs therapy, how should they approach them? What can they do? What can they say?
Ooh, I get this question a lot because it's like that something may be off or a little odd with your loved one. And it's not even about the pandemic. This was pre-pandemic, definitely post-pandemic. And so the first thing you want to do is really be patient with your loved one, right? And just understand that it may be difficult to even just verbally express that I need help, especially coming from the Black community. We all have the Superman, Superwoman complex. So we want to try not to judge our loved one because it can be really hard for them to even admit, one, that they need help. So, two, if you are seeing that they're struggling, please don't think in your mind, if I go over and bring a plate of macaroni cheese, collard greens, and baked chicken, that this is what they want. The best thing you can do for somebody is ask them, literally, how can I help you? I see that you're not yourself today. How can I, make you feel better? I've been worried about you. How are you really? Like, don't give me the girl, I'm fine. No, I'm hearing you say you fine, but I noticed yesterday. you had the same clothes on for the last 3 days, and you know I love you, but I'm worried about you. Like,
Mhm.
how are you? And so when we start to put the language in context in a way that our loved one is hearing it, where it's coming from an empathetic voice and not a judgmental voice, then they are more prone to open up. But when we come at them from a judgmental place, they become defensive and shut down, and they will never open up. So it can be hard for you, the person who really cares, to tell this person that they need help, and then for them to receive it and then go and give it. So we want to be able to have patience and be empathetic, right? And also express to them what we're seeing and say, like, I understand. How can I help you find help? If you're feeling anxious or depressed and you're a sign of weakness, it takes courage to speak up. But how can I help you? Because I'm seeing something is going on that normally isn't, happening or should be happening with you. So it's just you basically recognizing that something is off and then putting it in appropriate wording so that they can have that conversation, and then maybe you provide them with resources to see a therapist, or at least open up with you before they go to see a therapist, because they may not be ready to take that leap just yet.
Sure, sure. Let's talk about coping mechanisms a little bit. Even before you go to the therapist, or maybe after the therapist, I don't know. Maybe what are some coping skills when dealing with trauma and/or substance use disorder?
Well, so it's a lot of things that you can, do to cope. So I think that, it really just depends on the person in specific on what they're doing. But what you want to do is, one, identify like what your triggers are. What is setting you off.
Mm,
We want to be able to realize what these triggers are so that we can minimize our reaction, so that we're not um, reacting in a way that causes us to turn to that substance or that alcohol and just continue to use, right? We
yeah,
want to be able to check in with ourselves and know, like, okay, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling depressed. XYZ, a person, place, or thing triggered me. So how can I now minimize to make sure that it doesn't happen, again? Because a lot of times we know what sets us off, but we kind of like brush it off, and we'll turn to a substance and or alcohol to kind of like deal with it, but not try to really remove ourselves from the people, place, or things that continues to trigger us, if that makes sense.
it makes a lot of sense, and I think we need to press this a little more because I think people do things or put themselves in situations that could trigger an episode or trigger depression or whatever. And sometimes they're afraid to remove themselves, i.e., from a family situation or even from your job.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I remember somebody told me one time, a very good friend of mine, very um, wise man, said that, no matter what it costs, your health is important. So don't, I'm butchering what he said, but in essence, there's no amount of money, um, you know, you got to spend it, right? It doesn't matter what it costs. Spend it on your health because you only have one body,
Mhm.
right? You only have one life to live. But sometimes people get caught in a rut, I think, and they say, "Well, I can't leave my job. I got to make money, but it's the job that's causing you stress."
And that's killing you. And if you died tomorrow, the work would still be there, and your employer would, replace you in a heartbeat. And you're so right, Dr. Z. Um, and so if we're looking at ways that we can effectively cope, like you said, identifying what those things are, even if it does mean getting a new job. We don't want to overuse drugs and alcohol, let alone caffeine, sugar, and nicotine. We want to maybe write in our journal. Some people don't write in their journal because they're not journal writers, but that's a way to actually cope in a healthy way. Have a good ugly cry, right? Exercise. You don't have to be a gym rat, but you can do some walking out in nature, sitting out in the lake. We've become such a society that is so technologically dependent that we don't even know how to connect with nature anymore, right? Do some deep breathing, laugh, pray, meditate. Do some things that really will take you from 100 to at least 20, 25. You know what I mean? You can see a therapist, but there are some times that you can really go within yourself to help you again cope in a healthy way that it doesn't revolve around, drug and alcohol or any other type of substances.
Absolutely. Man, this has been so rich. Do you have any final thoughts about mental health before we tell people how they can get in touch with you and reach out to you? Just final thoughts.
Yeah, sure. We all have mental health, and some days many of us struggle to maintain it more than others. That doesn't mean that anything is wrong with you, right? Because we're all human. But that is why we have therapists, right? We have God and we also have therapists,
That's
and
right.
you can use them together, right? And I just want to press that upon our community. God, He is there, but He also created therapists for us to be in this space where you can come to us. And again, you don't have to have a heavy mind. You don't have to have trauma. It could just be again someone providing that safe space for you to get your mind right. Period. Whatever that looks like.
I love it. Call on Jesus and call your therapist. Say it all the time. I say it all, and God created these positions and these people, and God gave us purpose. His purpose, and He gave train up a child in the tenor of His ways. That means that child was meant to be a therapist. So there must be something to that. So, Dr. Holly, tell us how we can get in touch with you. If I'm in Philadelphia and I need you, how can I get in touch with you?
Well, I do teletherapy. I used to have a face-to-face location, but of course the pandemic changed that, shifted that. But I do hang out on Instagram and LinkedIn a lot. So if you are on LinkedIn, you can connect with me there. Just look for me, Dr. Holly Sawyer. And if you're on Instagram, my handle there is Life First Therapy LLC, Life First Therapy LLC, or Dr. Holly Coaching.
Let me see if I can put that in here. Life First Therapy LLC. Dr. Holly Sawyer, we thank you so much tonight for being my special guest. This has been great. All month long. Great. I got some more stuff tonight. All these tidbits I'm going to take in myself, and I appreciate your kindness and you taking the time. I really do. And please reach out to Dr. Holly if you need something, whatever you need. Check her books out. Check her out on all these social media sites and different things. And we thank you for being with us. So
thank you for having me.
No problem. We'll see you next week. We've got one more special guest, and we're turning our emphasis more to physical health. So I don't know. She might have us working out. I don't know what she's going to do. but I'm looking forward to her next week. And this has not only been a health awareness month, but it's been a month for women. Praise the Lord. I've had all female guests, and that was on purpose because it's our time, ladies. It's our time. So the Lord bless and keep you. The Lord make His face to shine upon you. The Lord lift up His countenance upon you, give you His peace, nothing missing, nothing broken, and we'll see you next week on Health Awareness Month on Monday Moment with Dr. D. God bless you.